Modern Warfare 2 is finally here, and there are a ton of settings to let your game get smoother, look crisper, and give you a whole lot more FPS. Starting out in the graphics settings, we're going to be in the display mode. Remember, this is for a PC graphics settings video. We're going to have our display mode on full screen exclusive. This game is ran on DX12, which allows it to process a lot better and be able to alt-tab a lot smoother than previous games. For display monitor, make sure you're using whatever monitor you're using. Obviously, it's going to be on your screen, so you'll know exactly which monitor you're using. Make sure you have the right GPU chosen, so you make sure you know exactly which one you're using if you have a dual monitor set or a dual GPU setup or whatever. Screen refresh rate, put it on a max. Auto is going to have it as max as well, I'm pretty sure, no matter what happens, but make sure it's on the max for your display that you have. Make sure your display resolution is at whatever display you are working with. Some of y'all are going to be using 1080p. I'm using a 1440p monitor, so mine's going to be a 1440p. Dynamic resolution, make sure this is off. It's going to help with making sure that we don't have any extra frame rate being used in the background. Aspect ratio, automatic. If you don't have it set up, make sure it's 16.9. That's going to be most PC monitors that you're using, unless you're using an ultra wide or something like that. VSync, turn it all off. It's going to use too much RAM. This is going to affect FPS drop as well, and so we don't want to use any extra RAM. It might make the game a little bit visually better, but it's going to have a little bit of screen tearing if your GPU is not up, or your RAM is not up to that. Custom frame rate, I like to keep mine at a little bit over what my frame rate is. Mine's 144 frames, but I keep it at 250 just in case it ever goes over. I don't have to worry about too much. For my menu screen, I keep it a little bit lower so the GPU isn't using as much power while I'm like not going into the game. So keep it at 100, so make sure it's pretty smooth and allows me to still go through my settings and all that stuff. Out of focus, if I ever alt tab to Google Chrome or Discord or whatever it is, I keep it low just so I don't have as much usage when I'm off the screen. So I keep it at 30. It's not going to affect anything, so it's not a huge deal. Restart shaders optimization. This is for if you ever have any issues with your shaders. Need to restart them, get them back to default. This will help you out a lot. So that's just a reset that you can have, basically. For display gamma, you only have two options here. 2.4 is if you're playing like on a TV or whatever, but we're all going to be playing on monitors, I hope. So keeping that at 2.2 sRGB. For the brightness, I keep mine at 55, a little bit more than the default. 50 allows you to see a little bit more on the dark corners and just allows you to have a much more visual experience. From there, in focus mode, we're going to keep this off. High dynamic range, unless you're using a HDR like a 1440p or a 4K monitor. Hope you're not using a 4K monitor for this game. It's very intensive. Put it on automatic. But if you're using a 1080p monitor, make sure to keep that off. Like I said, I'm using a 1440p monitor, so I'm keeping that on automatic. Going over to the quality, this is where the fun begins. It's going to be a custom. Don't worry about that as we start moving stuff. Render resolution, make sure it's at 100%. That's going to create the full render resolution of your entire monitor, which is exactly what you want. Upscaling, we're going to use a Fatality CAS. This is going to be if you have a pretty decent computer. Sorry. If you're having struggles getting like really good FPS, maybe bump this down to AMD FSR, but we're going to keep mine at Fidelity CAS. Anti-aliasing, you only have two options here. They're both SMAA, which is good, but the SMAA the T2X is going to help you out the most. Anti-aliasing quality, going to keep this low. This is going to help with all the anti-aliasing stuff. This actually affects the FPS pretty heavily, so we don't want to be messing with that too much on the ultra or high end. So I keep mine low, even though I have a pretty good GPU. Video scaling all the way up is going to make the quality of the game so much better, and it's going to help you out a whole lot. For details and textures, some of these are going to be high, some of these are going to be low. For the texture resolution, which won't affect any visual, it's going to be on like the walls and stuff. We're going to keep that super low so we can see the enemies a lot better. This affects RAM usage a ton, so we're going to keep that super low. Texture filter, anisotropic, we're going to keep this very high. It doesn't affect the FPS a whole lot. If you are having some FPS drops, maybe move this to either normal or low, but it doesn't affect it a whole lot. Nearby level of detail, which means like those close fights, we're going to keep that pretty high so we can get a good quality with that. Distance level of detail, so like maybe like you're sniping and all the walls in the background, we want to keep that low because we want to focus on the players, not the walls. Clutter draw distance, which is going to be like the extra stuff that you see on the ground and whatnot. We want to keep this as short. We don't want to see the crazy stuff from deep. This will help the FPS actually on an incredible amount. Particle quality, any explosions, any bullets coming from you, we want to keep this high so we can see what's going on. If you're having some FPS drops with this, you can put it to low, but I like to keep mine high because for a visual reference. Particle quality level, we're going to keep that low just for the same thing. The walls in the background, we don't need to see the little tiny details of the walls in the background. Bullet impact spray, keep this on so I know when bullets are being shot at me. It helps you kind of like visually understand what's going on in the game a little bit more. Shader quality, keep this low. Hate shaders, which you can turn them off, but you can't Call of Duty for some reason. Tessellation, keep this near. Kind of the same thing. You get to see the graphics pretty close up when we're in those high intense fights, but anything distance, it is not a big deal. Terrain memory, we're going to keep this a max. You can put it on minimum. I don't think the FPS drop it's too much if you put it to maximum, so I think it's going to be a pretty good setting for us there. On-demand texture streaming, turn that off. What that means basically is that when you're playing the game, it's going to try to stream the textures and like reset them. We don't want to have that happen while we're playing the game. Stream quality, keep it low. None of us are going to be using this to a full extent. It's not a huge setting, so we're going to keep this pretty low. Volumetric quality, going to keep this low as well. This is going to show those details again, kind of the same thing, those backdrops. We don't really care about the quality of the textures deep, so we want to make sure to keep that pretty low. Deferred physics quality off. Water caustics, keep that off as well. I don't know the FPS drop for the water caustics, but we're going to keep that off just in case. I'm going to try and get as much FPS as possible for my game. Shadow map resolution, same thing. You're going to keep this kind of low. What this means is that with the shadows, instead of it being like a sharp angle and kind of almost like a cartoony look, if you keep it on high or extra, it's going to have an actual, what would be like an actual shade in a real life setting where it's kind of faded at the end. That's going to help the FPS if you keep it low. Screen space shadows, going to keep this low. Anything with shadows, we're going to keep it pretty low. So spot shadow quality, keeping it low. Spot cache, keeping this low as well. This affects VRAM usage a ton, and we do not want that at all. Particle lighting, so you see those explosions. The brighter it is, the less FPS we're going to get, so we want to keep that pretty low as well. Ambient occlusion, going to keep this off as well. Screen space reflections. This is in-game graphics with a certain angle and reflective surfaces. So this is kind of like the thing about like Minecraft when they had the new updates. It's going to affect the FPS a whole lot, so keep that off at all times. Static reflection quality, kind of the same thing, keeping this low. And then weather grid volume is going to keep this low as well. Processing effects. Oh, I'm stuttering today. NVIDIA reflex low latency. I keep mine on. You can put it on boost. That affects FPS pretty drastically, but I keep mine on if you have an NVIDIA graphics card. If you don't, keep it off. If you don't have an intense graphics card, like I have a 3080, maybe you have like a 2000 series, probably keep this off for you guys. Depth of field, we're gonna keep this off. This affects different motions when you're shooting the gun, so we're gonna keep this off as well. World motion blur and weapon motion blur, keep that off. If you've ever played Call of Duty with motion blur on, you know it is gonna give you a headache. If you just the graphic right here, it gets so blurry, it gives me a headache every time I do it. Full film grain all the way down to the bottom. We're gonna keep this 0. This is gonna help with those little textures as well, those little details. Put them down. We don't really need those. If you want a crazy cool experience while playing, turn it high, but I don't really care about that. I care about my FPS and my performance. From here, we're gonna go to the view. So you can set your field of view to 120. I have always played 110. I played on Apex. I played on Warzone. 110 is my sweet spot. That's what I like to use, so that's why I'm keeping it. ADS field of view, we want to make sure it's effective, so we know that we are zooming in on a player. We can kind of see them just a little bit better. Helps out with a lot of visual recoil as well. Weapon field of view, going to get the default. Just going to keep the field of view that we have as normal. If you go wide, I'm pretty sure it like makes it like super wide when you're zoomed out. We don't really want that too much. Vehicle field of view, I haven't really used vehicle, so I'm just going to keep this as default for right now. Third person, I'm not playing any third person, so it's not a huge deal. Camera, this is the important thing. It's going to create the visual effect that you have no recoil or very minimal recoil on your gun. I'm going to put this all the way down to 50%. This is going to make the recoil and the jump of the gun very minimal, so keep that low. Put it on third person as well. Not a huge deal for me because I'm not playing the third person game. And then these two are just basic settings. I'm keeping the helmet camera. That's gonna be what's gonna be probably the best for you guys as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this. There's some settings you can kind of tweak. If your graphic card's a little better, you can put some of these to the higher end. I have some of mine on the higher end. But if you have some FPS drop, make sure to lower those down. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope it helps you out entirely so much. If you haven't already, make sure to drop a like and subscribe as well. And I'll see you guys in the next video.